The Steelers' plan just became insanely clear as the truth has finally leaked surrounding Aaron Rodgers. A brand new update has dropped, but not only that, we have Mike Tomlin and others speaking out on the Steelers' plan ahead of the crucial game this Sunday that has huge implications going forward, as well as a bunch of injury updates. A ton to go over today, folks, but before you get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Ladies and gentlemen, big game against the Bears in just a few days, and each game at this point has some serious implications in the playoffs and, of course, the division with the Ravens right behind the Steelers. But we have some information being leaked surrounding Aaron Rodgers' injury, but also what their plan is heading into the game Sunday. So let's start with the Aaron Rodgers injury. And first, before we get into some of the details and Aaron Rodgers speaking out about the severity of the injury, he is, of course, at this point still questionable for the game on Sunday. But he was asked about his wrist injury, but on if there is any added incentive to play this week since it's the Bears in Chicago, a team he said he, quote, owns, as we all know. He said, "There's incentive for every opponent, but I've enjoyed many Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays in that city." So obviously, he's not going to push himself to play against the Bears if he's not ready, but it is a funny kind of full circle moment for him, especially towards the end of his career here as we approach the end of the season and potentially the end of his career. But he also came out and made some very interesting comments about his injury and what the truth is behind his availability on Sunday. And he said simply, it's a safety thing, shooting down the notion that his ability to play would come down to pain management. He asked about clarity on his availability could come all the way down to a pregame decision. So they're basically asking him if it'll come down to Sunday itself. Tomlin said it could happen. He said, "I'm going to leave that up to Mr. Coach Mike Tomlin," which is what Aaron Rodgers said. And he also asked if he had any incentive, and of course he said no, but did admit that it's a great sports town, phenomenal sports fans, and a great place to play. So this is interesting because it isn't going to be a pain management thing, which a lot of injuries in the NFL are. If it can't get worse, then obviously most of the time the players play. But if it can get worse, you try to sit it out. And it's like that for many other major sports leagues, but the NFL is obviously the worst for injuries. But safety, of course, being like permanent damage, all these different things. Can it get significantly worse? That is the biggest question. Now, he did also speak about how it would affect his ability to be under center, be in shotgun formation. He said, "I would say it'd be more difficult to take a snap under center than to catch one in the gun. And there's been times in my career where we have adjusted and gone to some pistol sets if we need to still keep the spacing on the run distribution between the halfback and the QB." So obviously, if he takes snaps under center, they're better off offensively like that. But out of the shotgun, in his mind, it's easier to, of course, catch a snap than it would be to grab it under center with his current wrist injury. And it isn't the aggravation of a pre-existing issue as well. So this is a brand new injury, and it happened in the second down play late in the second quarter against the Bengals. So he admitted that he was in a lot of pain. We were late in the play clock, called timeout, came over. I felt like I could go one more play, and then went in, got it checked out, and we know the rest is history. Mason Rudolph came in, and they got the job done. But some very interesting information there started to come out, and it all kind of starts to, show what their plan is going to be on Sunday. And we have some comments from, of course, Terrell Austin, the defensive coordinator, Mike Tomlin himself. But at the end of the day, he is going to be a game time decision. And it's probably one that's going to come down to the wire here on Sunday, because if it gets better before Sunday, it's clear they're going to want to use Aaron Rodgers instead of Mason Rudolph. But at the same time, if it doesn't get any better and he continues to, if they have to greatly limit the sets they're running because of his injury, they'd probably rather take Mason Rudolph and take Aaron Rodgers out and just let him rest and get ready for some of the more crucial games, especially the interdivision games like the Ravens in a couple weeks, I believe week 13 or week 14. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. Does this make you more encouraged, less encouraged? Ultimately, it's a safety thing, and there is no added incentive for Aaron Rodgers to come back against the Steelers or against the Bears, despite some of his previous comments going. And of course, how this is going to be. It's going to be an interesting one, regardless, right? And I think it's probably Mason Rudolph. Let me know down below what your thoughts are. Now, a few other things have come out, and let's start with Cory Trice. Now, obviously, he's going to be out for the season. A new report dropped on that. Defensive coordinator Terrell Austin says that it stinks to see Cory Trice have another injury setback. Now, we think back to the time of the draft. He fell to the Steelers in the later rounds, and he was projected to be a third-round pick if he hadn't had a bunch of injury problems, and he's been made of glass so far in his Steelers career. Super talented when he's available, but he hasn't really been available. And you can see here, sometimes there's a lot of guys who are really capable and talented in this league that don't make it in this league because of injuries. He's already back to work plotting his next comeback. And we all want Cory Trice to do well. And at the end of the day, he did fall down to the Steelers in the 6th, 7th round because of the fact that he was injury prone. And it hasn't really worked out yet, but I do have faith that he's going to come back, hopefully, better than ever. Also, on the note of Terrell Austin, he spoke out on the Steelers using more too high sets and being flexible with their game planning. He said, if we can continue to mix it up defensively and not give them something that's like, hey, this is what they have, it allows us to not play at a disadvantage. And we've seen all year, they've been moving around, defensive players a lot. I mean, whether that be Darius Slay now coming in for James Pierre, which I don't agree with, moving moving Jalen Ramsey to the, safety instead of cornerback, and moving everybody around, acquiring Kyle Duggar. They're changing things up every week, really. And you could also see here from Nick Farabaugh, Steelers game plans the last 3 weeks. Against the Colts, they were cover 6 heavy. Against the Chargers, they were back to single high man-to-man being blitz heavy. And then against the Bengals, they blitzed a little bit, split safety looks, but ultimately was perfect because this is the third time now in 3 games they've changed it up. But against Joe Flacco, they didn't blitz a ton, which I'm sure some fans were surprised with because Flacco doesn't move too well in the pocket or anything like that. But they've run 3 different scripts the last 3 games, and their plan now is clear. They're not going to show us what it is. They're not going to tell us what it is, but they're going to figure it out based on Caleb Williams, who Terrell Austin himself called an escape artist, and that if you give him a tight window, he'll take it. He's just dynamic, and this is a young player on the rise. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with not only how they run, what sets they run, what schemes they run, both defensively against Caleb Williams, but also offensively with Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph, but also James Pierre versus Darius Slay. And Austin says they will see how that works out on the snap count, and he adds that Pierre has earned his way to get more defensive snaps, though. And this is obviously the frustrating part is I think we all, if you watch Steelers games this year, I think we all agree that James Pierre has outplayed Darius Slay in his brief amount of time. But Mike Tomlin, it's his philosophy. They don't bench players because of injuries, and that's kind of what happened with Darius Slay. He's been also made of glass, and he's approaching his mid-30s here. He's at his mid-30s. He's about to be 35. So as a 34-year-old, you're not going to have the same legs, the same recoverability as you do with James Pierre. But even that aside, Pierre has looked better regardless there. So it's going to be interesting. Their plan has become clearer and clearer. We might even see Caleb Johnson see more carries in the run game. And he said that he will, if the team can have a game where he ends up calling 40 runs, that'd be nice. So they want to get the run game more involved, especially if Mason Rudolph is going to be the guy who is ultimately the quarterback, because he has less experience with Arthur Smith, less experience in the offense, though he still has a lot because he's been around for a while, been drafted by the Steelers. But let me know down below what your thoughts are on all of this. We're going to see a lot of run game. Jaylen Warren's going to be good to go. Interchangeable between Warren and Gainwell following Gainwell's best game of the year. And of course, the Bears are actually favored according to the game preview picks here, which I don't take too much into it, but they have it a super close game. I have the Steelers winning 27-20, but let me know down below what you guys have it as. A lot of different picks here, 24-21, 27-23, and then the majority, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the 10 have the Bears winning, which is a little bit surprising to me. Let me know down below what your guys' predictions are. You guys are absolutely fantastic. We'll see you later.